Hoping my mic's working okay and you can hear me. Wonderful. So if you see me looking in this top corner, that's because that's where all my stream settings and everything are. My dual monitor I put on the wall for some reason because I thought it was cool. So, welcome to Minicast Live. I hope the stream's working okay for everybody. We're not being too laggy. It's my first time using Streamlabs compared to OBS. So we're gonna give it a try. Format will probably change if we do this again. This was just my testing format, and I'm hoping everyone enjoys it enough that we can keep going and keep using um, Minicast 5. Sup, Mr. White? So, for today's topic of coverage, I'm also rocking the new Stadium Series jersey from the Bruins. I will be discussing minor transactions, because there is no major transactions to talk about right now. We will talk about the league standings, the new waiver rules, which I'm actually very excited to cover because it's something I've been asking for forever, and we finally got it. Was a way to benefit the teams on the bottom of the standing. Possible cap dangers that we might be seeing in this offseason. And then, of course, I am Portland's owner. It's only right I talk about Portland's future. So it's in here as well. Alright, we'll try not to make this seem like a school presentation. So we'll start with minor transactions. So, the first one is an interesting one right away, because in the sense, it seems like a massive downgrade from Hamilton, and a kinda upgrade from Atlanta. Especially picking up that sniper in Myro Thomas, who's actually having a pretty okay season. I should have written down the stats. First lesson for next time. And then Hamilton receives Aiden Brack. Aiden Brack is a name we see all the time chatting. He's a very active personnel in the Discord, and he's a two-way forward, so he hits hard. In the minors, we see how important that is a lot more than we do in the majors. Obviously, in the majors right now, everybody and their mom is a 99 overall. However, in the minors, we're not all at that point yet, so this is where trading and strategy comes in handy. So bringing in a two-way forward who hits more as well as shoots more can actually be quite important. So I think Hamilton won that trade in my opinion. I think it was a very smart move on Hamilton's part. This was just a one-for-one trade. We're going to see a bunch of these, especially in the minors. And of course we see a bunch of these in the pros. So just a one-for-one trade, but I would say it's a pretty good trade. Nothing to dive into too deep there, it's just a general trade. This is one that I thought was interesting. So Kansas made a trade with Quebec. Again, this is just in the minors, but we've seen, ready for this terrible pronunciation of a name, Makoto Nakayami? Narukami? Go to Kansas. Now, this was a move we saw coming. There was some rumors going around the Discord that he was going to be moved. He was moved, so that's impressive. And to Kansas nonetheless. So, Makoto is one of the highest rated defensemen in the minors. This is probably the biggest move we're going to see this season if I had to imagine. This was a fantastic pickup from Kansas, who's in a pretty good playoff spot right now. My new favorite to win the cup with Mikoto. I think that's all it was going to take. I think I've said that name differently all 3 times I've tried to say it. But I think that was a very smart move. Quebec bringing in defenseman Jay Gates and left winger Bonnie James. That's interesting. So it's to my understanding of the new minor rules that allow them to trade that the rosters are not going to switch every offseason. They're going to stay the same. So there won't be a rebalancing unless if it's absolutely necessary. This is to my understanding. I could be wrong on this. Don't quote me. Nobody write this down and say Minion said it, so it's true. So with that in mind, Quebec, who probably wasn't going to go that far in the playoffs, brought in Jay Gates and Bonnie James. Mikoto wanted to be traded. Yes, I saw that part. I knew he wanted to be traded. The question of was where. So we knew he was moving. So what I think is interesting about Quebec's return is Jay Gates you might have next season. Defensemen are risky right now. just because the league has been bouncing so fast. And with how fast it's been bouncing and how fast names have been changing, it's almost completely safe to say that one defenseman or both defensemen could be called up in the offseason. I'm actually going to adjust my camera down so you guys can see more of my hand movements because I do this whole thing. Um, so with that in mind, Jay Gates and Makoto could both be gone in the offseason. They both might not be. So those two defenders are always going to be a high risk, maybe one season rental. Ronnie James, on the other hand, is a young left winger. I don't know how active he is. I didn't check. I've seen his name a few times in the Discord. So what Quebec does is they bring in Jay Gates for the rest of the season, who's only about 5 overall separate, and then they bring in Rabani James. And when you do such a combo such as Rabani James, you now have somebody who's going to be back next year, going to be a high overall. You're going to give Quebec a massive advantage. Oh, and FFB's coach just came in, so Mako's probably going to be down next year too. So this could be a win trade for both. The other thing worth mentioning is after this trade, Quebec signed Dory Almer, who, the reason why it's all question marks is he doesn't have an overall on the sheet yet, which usually just means he's overall. Oh, I'm being... So that's actually really good. Thank you for the follow, Mr. Brave Bulldogs. I see you. So that's actually a really smart pickup on Quebec's end as well. So even though that's not a part of this trade, Quebec got 3 players in one transaction period, lost 1, so they had a positive gain of 2, and these are all players who most likely will be back for the team next season. So Quebec won that trade. I have to say Quebec won that trade. Almost at 20 follows. Whoa. So that's really good stuff. Great transactions. We're going to move forward to the league standings. We actually have notes for this one. Don't you worry. Paper notes instead of just notes on my phone. So, format that will change. I couldn't figure out how to do this quickly. I would like to get it more fancy in the future. So right now, if they have a happy face, they're in a playoff spot. If they don't have a happy face, they're not in a playoff spot. They are also sorted by division. So, of course, that means like right up here is one division, a circle around it, and then this would be a division, this would be a division. I don't have all the division names memorized. I just know the Rocket and Mr. Hockey. Just because, to my understanding, divisional standings don't really matter. So, it's just top 8 teams from the conference makes the playoffs, which is why we got a whole bunch of happy faces. Are we having some struggles? Are we freezing? It is possible. It is my end, so I apologize ahead of time. Alright. It's freezing a bit. Okay. Sounds good. So, what that probably is, my Wi-Fi is not great in my bedroom, and I have like 20 people over today, so I couldn't do this downstairs. Perks of being the only one with a room upstairs. That's okay. So, the major standings, if they have a happy face, they're one of the 8 playoff teams. If they don't have a happy face, they're not one of the 8 playoffs teams. We're going to start with this division here. I think is the North Division. I cannot remember all the names. I should have written them down. Alaska is on top of this division right now by 6 points. They are 19-7-1, which is very good this early on in the season. They are probably a lock to make the playoffs. Not going to say they're a lock to win the division. For anyone who doesn't pay attention to the standings or watch the live streams, Vancouver is rewriting their entire season. They started below Calgary. They were just on the edge of a playoff spot. They seemed like they weren't going to make it for sure. And now they are currently in the middle of a 9-game win streak, which is almost taking over the league record. I think they're 3 games away from the league record, which they'd take from Jacksonville. And they are 16-10-1 with 33 points. So they're only 6 points behind Alaska. That's only 3 wins. So would be very easy for Vancouver and Alaska to switch depending on how Vancouver keeps playing. Vancouver has one of the hardest weeks in my opinion. They have a very strong schedule ahead, so I don't imagine the win streak is going to keep going. However, it might, and if it does, they could very easily keep climbing in the standings. And they could quickly overtake Alaska. I don't see them overtaking Honolulu anytime soon, but we'll talk about them in a second. Yukon is on the bottom of the division. They are 4-22-1, and they have 9 points. I can't say anybody is eliminated from the season yet. People can come back. There's so many things that can happen. However, I think as of right now, it's safe to say Yukon is not a team we should be worried about. And before anyone worries about me crapping on Yukon, don't worry, Portland's going to get their turn too. We're going to move on to the second division in the Rocket standings. Jacksonville's on the top of this one with 40 points. They've also have a 19-7-2 record compared to the 19-7-1. Thank you. So Northwest, South, Pacific, Atlantic, Europe, and Great Lakes. So they had them organized by division. I just forgot all the divisions' names. So Jacksonville's 40 points. Jacksonville's usually on top of the world. They're usually high in the standings. I'm not actually super shocked to see them here. They have a great team. They're going to keep going. They're probably a playoff lock. A safe bet to make the finals, if anyone's a betting man. Miami is right on their tails with 39 points. Just with that one extra regulation loss, that's kind of where they're behind by 1 point. So these two can swap at any point. It's going to be a tight watch for positioning in the playoffs in this back end of the season. Or I guess we're just in like the middle of the season right now. But we're getting there. And then Abaki. Ooh, I hate how long of a name they have. The Pharaohs are 17-7-3. They have 37 points. So this is probably the most competitive division, right up to where Sydney is. And then Sydney basically doesn't exist in this division. They're 6-18-3. They still have 15 points. So saying they're not there at all isn't fair. They're just in probably one of the more competitive divisions. If they were over in the Pacific, they're competing. They're playing well. But because they're over in the South, it's unfortunate. But they're not really competing. I don't see them turning their season around. Again, that 8th seed spot is really up in the air. They could maybe take Calgary if they win out the rest of the season and Calgary starts going rough. That's difficult. But they won't climb the division. Final division is the Pacific Division. Honolulu has this division. They have 48 points. It's the most in the conference. I don't think there's any competition. Honolulu has that division. Las Vegas, they're 12 points behind. They need to win 6 and have Honolulu lose a butt ton. They're not going to do that. St. Paul and Portland are kind of both in a rebuild. Portland is in a rebuild. They're not playing well. They have 9 points, just like Yukon. Their playoff dreams are probably not there. This wasn't completely unexpected from the team. We know we're in a rebuild. That's okay. Yukon knows they're in a rebuild. That's okay. And St. Paul, I don't think they're too far out. But it does, like, I'm hearing rumors that they might not be trying to push for the playoffs and try to build up for next year or the year after. It's not a bad decision when you have teams like Honolulu, Jacksonville, even Rome is scary right now. So teams towards the bottom, it might make sense for them to go acquire future pieces. And with the new waiver rule, we might see that happen more and more. We will talk about that in a bit. We're going to move into Mr. Hockey next. Mr. Hockey is, well, it's the Europe show, to be quite honest with you. The Europe teams are kind of dominating over on that end, and that's just kind of how it is. For example, we could take this whole Europe team, all 4 of them, stack them on top of the Atlantic Division over here, and they'd all stay the same positioning. That is how dominant Europe is over there right now. I guess that's just going to be what happens. So, again, smiley faces are the playoff positions. You can see that all Europe teams are in the top 8. Starting over in order with the Atlantic, the Tennessee Black Bears are 13-13-1 for 27. That's a pretty good record. Their division isn't crazy competitive, but both Brooklyn and Boston could realistically catch them. Hartford is another case where I don't see it is still mathematically possible for them to make playoffs, but the probability isn't there. They are 2-22-3. They have 7 points. They are the worst team in the standings right now. They might catch up to Portland. That wouldn't surprise me. But if they were able to overtake Boston or Brooklyn, I'd be very impressed. That would have to be a whole storyline. I'd have to do its whole own episode just on Hartford defeating Brooklyn. There's not much to say about Europe. They are stacked teams doing stacked team things. The Black Watch has 20 wins. The Vikings have 17. The Finns have 18s. The Firebirds have 14. Again, that's still enough to be above Tennessee. So this division's going to keep doing their own thing. I imagine we're going to keep seeing these three drop. Maybe the Black Watch drop. I have no safe bets on it. I'm not going to go into too much detail on Europe because they're all in the playoffs. They're all competitive, and they're going to keep being competitive probably for a season or two. As we found out early in the stream, one of the Firebirds' best defensive prospects, they don't even need to call up anytime soon. So when you keep that in mind, these teams are just going to keep rolling and rolling into the playoffs. And historically speaking, Europe's done pretty well in the playoffs. I think the Vikings have won or tied for the most championships, but I think they might have the most. So that just tells you all you really need to know about how stacked Europe is, how stacked Copenhagen is. They're usually the safe playoff bet. Now we're going to move into one that's completely shocked me. And that's the Detroit Devilfish. They are 25-2 for 42 points. That's really good. Like, that is, I wouldn't say the best in the league good. No, that's still Honolulu, but that is the best in the conference good. I was expecting them to be towards the bottom. I feel like I'm throwing heat at them. Oh, who's the most overrated team in Europe? Most overrated team. I'm going to say Turk's the most overrated, in my opinion. I've done deals with Turk. I know they have people like Sam Jago, who's a Norfolk and Portland legend. But in my opinion, yeah, Turk is definitely the most overrated. The Firebirds will probably take their spot at some point. I think they're getting lucky with a good schedule so far, in my opinion. Not throwing shade, but they lost to Portland, and if you lose to Portland, you're overrated. Going back to Detroit, their season's a complete flip from last year. Don't be surprised if they charge at the cup. Just honestly, the star power that this team's came out with to even be above Columbus, who is one of the best wheeling and dealing teams out there, just shows you how good Detroit is. Now, Columbus is only behind them by 4 points. So it could be a little dramatic here in saying that, they're the best team in Mr. Hockey, but I think Detroit is the best team in Mr. Hockey. Toronto, with still the best logo, does so well on this backdrop. It's 15-11-1. They have 31 points. It's another example where we could take all of this division, except North Bay, we'll chuck North Bay out of here, get rid of North Bay, and put them on top of the Atlantic. It shows you just how the difference between these two divisions is with the Atlantic. The Atlantic's not even the weakest division in the league, but that's just how they're performing this season. So Toronto, I don't see dropping out of the playoffs. North Bay, 6-21, I don't think they'll catch them. Maybe Boston and Brooklyn, but that's still a 10-point difference. So that's unlikely. I think if anybody is going to get caught in the heel, it would be Turk or the Firebirds between one of these teams. But I wouldn't be surprised if these 8 don't switch. My official playoff predictions will be, you're going to have Detroit. I think Tennessee is going to stay, so they'll be your 8 seeds. So you're going to have Detroit, Tennessee. The Black Watch, I think, will be colliding with either Firebirds or Turk. We're gonna say Turk because I do think that switch is gonna happen. Firebirds and Vikings would be cool, and then I don't know who that is for Toronto, but Toronto would be playing a team. I think that we've Columbus. So Columbus and Toronto, which would be a great matchup. My way too early final predictions, and I mean way too early final predictions. Honolulu is gonna make it back. They're going to attempt another finals, and they're gonna meet this little squid, and that little squid is gonna win it, and that's gonna be the logo we see everywhere for like the next 6 months. Or we're gonna see a pineapple everywhere. Some of the weirdest logos this week has. I'll give them that much. So that's the standings. I don't see them changing too much. We're at that point of the season where I think everything is set in stone, per se. Next, we're going to talk about the waiver rule, which is one I'm actually very excited to talk about, personally, because it affects Portland more than I think it would affect some of the top teams. So, I only highlighted the 8 things that I think, or technically 9, because I put 10 and 11 together, that the league needs to know about if you're not on a management perspective, if you're not actively reading the rule changes, what they might mean to a team like Portland, what they might mean to like a top team, and then we will actually go look at the roster page in a bit, and I will discuss exactly what I mean by how complex this rule could be, but why it can be so helpful to those bottom teams. So the first one, the very first rule, is an active player can now be assigned to the minors. That is huge. So if, say, Portland, in the regular season, we called up Pro Goat. Yes, they are definitely sick additions. I agree, BC. I agree. Then, in the offseason, I could trade for a higher overall defender and send Pro Goat back down to the minors, where a player who's like 61 overall, the chance he's going to get a waiver claim, I would say, is pretty slim. Except if teams are trying to stockpile, well, no, because yeah, if you claim somebody, they are a pro, and then we'd have to go through waivers again. So like, you can't stockpile prospects by claiming them. You can only claim them for use of your pro roster, which I think was very smart. Oh, I'm zooming around my content. So it's going to benefit those minor teams who are struggling, as well as those major teams who are struggling, because they're going to get an influx of new players through this waiver wire. It also helps with cap issues. It's going to help with league retention. You're not going to be able to, hold your 85 in the minors for an additional 2 seasons, because the cap's going to go down, and you're going to have to start waiving people. You're going to have to meet that cap. And when you waive people, that's going to leave like Sydney, who needs a butt ton of players right now, to come in and be like, yeah, this one's mine. So we're going to see some interesting new off seasons with that. So what's the tiebreaker? If multiple claims are submitted, the player with the lowest position in the standings from the previous week gets the player. If the teams are tied in points, it'll be worst goal differential. I don't hate that system, but I don't like that system. That's just a me thing. Like, it's about helping the lower seeded teams, and I think that's the most important. But personally, I think it should be like a ladder system where the team with the highest bid, if they make that claim, then they move down, and then the next team, if they make that claim, they move down. And I think that's just how I would like it. I don't think this is a bad system, but then you keep rotating which team has the highest bid potential. The only reason I could see that being a pain in the butt is, like, say Columbus had the highest bid potential and claimed an 82 overall, which a minor team could really use. But again, then Columbus is going to have to waive a defender. So the reason why I think that ladder rule can come in handy is, say if Columbus is about to hit a cap wall, so they claim a 79 overall defense on waivers, then they could send their 95 overall down to the waivers. Sydney or Portland can then grab that 95. And then Columbus meets the cap restrictions. Sydney gets a good player, or Portland gets a good player. Both teams are happy. So that's why I like the idea of the ladder system. obviously doesn't have to exist. Oh, excuse me. But that's what I would have personally done or submitted. And then I came up with it after this rule got approved because that's how the NHL does it, and I thought about it later. The fifth rule, or waiver 5, players with a no trade clause will be treated as having a full non-movement clause for waiver purposes and may not be waived without players' consent. I put that one here because it's kind of confusing to read. I don't fully understand what they mean by that myself, so I wanted to draw the league's attention to it because then in week 10 they talk about the new clauses, including the full no movement clause. So I know that all the current players are godfathered in, which means everybody currently in the league with a no trade clause received a no full movement clause, and I believe that's what this rule is talking about. However, it makes it sound like any player who signs a future no trade clause can't be sent to the waivers without players' consent. And I think that could be confusing. So that's why I brought that rule in. That's why I said it was important to look at. My fourth one that I thought was important, we're going to skip to rule 6. If players clear waivers and they go unclaimed, so that means no pro team wanted them, they will be assigned to the minors team lowest in the standings from the previous week. Positional needs will be used as a tiebreaker. So this is different than the majors. And I actually also like that positional needs being used as a tiebreaker more than worst goal differential for both leagues. In the sense where, say, Detroit loses one of their defenders because he went IA. And Turk waived an 85 overall defender or 67 overall defender, and Detroit has nobody, then it would make more sense that Detroit got that higher bid than Sydney or Portland, who's just getting a positional upgrade. But again, players would just keep going through the waivers until either there's no pro team that has an open spot, or there's no team that wants them, and then they go to the minors. I just think it's interesting in the sense where um, teams higher in the standing can almost get punished if they don't have prospects. So that's my view on that, but I'm low in the standing, so I'm okay with them getting punished. My bias will be shown. The fifth one I'm drawing attention to is goaltenders are never eligible for waivers. I think that's an interesting rule. And the reason I think that's an interesting rule, especially with how we're doing the minors system, is we might start seeing, I'm going to use again Portland as an example. Currently my recreate, Minion Barents is a goaltender. If at any point I wanted to sign a much higher than 67 overall goaltender, I can't waive Minion Barents. Now, Minion Barents is an owner player, I could never waive him. But say I wasn't the owner, then that 72, 69-ish goaltender is going to be stuck. So, with him being stuck, I think goaltenders can be hit by a backhand. This is a rule that we haven't really got to see in place yet, so I'm not going to say it will happen, but I think it's a possibility it's going to come up that a goaltender who's getting destroyed in the majors at 69 overall, and one in the minors who says a 77 or an 80 and should have that pro spot, won't be able to get that pro spot. So I think that's worth mentioning. Of course, that's only going to be we're going to see that in the next season or two, because we have more goalies being filtered out the past couple seasons than we will going for like another 8 seasons, because goaltenders are a locked position. They don't really move too much from team to team or even draft to draft, because every team only gets one. I'm sure one day the league will be big enough that we'll have starters, backups, and then maybe we'll see that rule change. Moving into the salary retention, capped at 50%. It's pretty standard. You can keep up to half of a salary. I think the NHL has the exact same rule where they can keep up to half the salary. And it may only be used during trade deadline week and the week prior, so 2 total weeks. I don't agree with that. Personally, I think that it should be used at any point. And I get why people wouldn't want that. But say in the off season you're over the cap, you need to open up some space, and there's a trade you want to do, but the other team doesn't want to take that full cap, then you're kind of locked with that player to the trade deadline. So that's where I don't really see the point of having it restricted to just a trade deadline. I think it's kind of redundant because then all players are going to do is hold on to their player until the trade deadline. However, it's already going to go into effect. I'm sure when we see transactions either today or tomorrow for this week, we might already see some used or not. We'll see. It might take some time to start getting used, but it's definitely an interesting rule change, and I think it's just one that's going to be a little restrictive and unusable, obviously, to the trade deadline.
Oh, excuse me.
Um, the other one I wanted to draw attention to, just because I saw somebody talking about this, I think, retained salaries may not be traded independently from the original transaction. So once you retain a salary, it's there. You can't just be like, okay, well, can I give you my retained salary so I can retain another's players? Once you move the retained salary, not move, sorry, once you have the retained salary, it's permanently locked in until that contract expires. So it's going to be interesting to see how people play with that, and what the punishment could be. And then the other one I wanted to draw attention to is W10, which is the new contract clauses. I think this is going to make the offseason very fun for owners. I think it's going to make it very fun for players because you get to consider a lot more of the what you want your player's future to be. So the no minor clause I think we're going to see used all the time. Player cannot be sent down to the minor without consent. I think teams are going to use that on, your 90 overall players, your 88 overall players. Anybody above probably 85 is going to request those non-minor clauses, except if they're very team-friendly. I'm thinking back to Tyler Grimace. He's a very team-friendly player, so I could totally see him not worrying about no minor clauses. But I think for the most part, we're going to see that one on every other contract. That's going to be the most common clause. NTCs we see a fair bit. I think Portland has 6 NTCs in total. They're just, you can't be traded without consent, or you might have a trade risk, or blah, 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 blah. That's not a new one. What is a new one is the 4-no movement clause. That's actually very exciting. So the 4-no movement clause is the NTC and MC. So we're going to see those two combined into one, which is the FNMC. And I think, what was the word I was looking for? I think that one's also going to be used quite a bit. Players like owners are going to have it automatically, because automatically owners can't be traded. So automatically we're going to see that used for owners. And then everybody else, we're going to see that for the stars. We're probably going to see that for players that want to commit to one team their entire career, so half the league. And that's just going to be how it is. The one I have here in bold is connected to this week 5, and this is why I brought up the W5, not the week 5. All existing contracts will be godfathered in as NMCs unless they already contain an NTC, in which case they'll be upgraded to a full non-movement clause. So that's the combination of those two rules. That's the Godfather rule. That one will only exist until this off season, where all new contracts will be signed.
Excuse me again.
So we're going to see an immediate change. And I apologize for all the yawning. I worked till midnight and had to get up at 6 a.m. to take my fiance to work. Okay, cap dangers. So for cap dangers, and you guys are going to get to see all my Google slides that I've been using. We're going to go look at the rosters for a second. Okay, so the reason why I wanted to draw attention to cap dangers, and if we go cap info, you can already see it. So, season 13 cap, the soft cap was 1,600, the hard cap was 1,700. 2 away, 8 away, 3 away. Like already, teams are way over the soft cap. And then, of course, you have teams like UConn, who's way under. Sitting in Toronto, who's been struggling with keeping players who are way under. The overall difference are very clearly seen. And so this is something that I know the league's been discussing is the issues of these overall differences. Because when you look at a team like Copenhagen or Columbus, who are well above that 1730, and then you go down and you look at teams like Portland, who have almost a 200 different in overall. is why we start seeing teams so much on the bottom. It's why we've probably seen the waiver rule introduced, is to help those teams on the bottom. Um, Perfect. Thank you, BC. Only teams on expiring contracts can have salary retained. I forgot about that part. But if we look at the next season, there's almost a 30 difference in projected hard cap. So it's 29 already. You're gonna see like the projected hard cap for Abaku is 17-14, way over. Projected cap for Detroit, they were under by just a little bit. Um, Grasno a little bit. So all teams are going to have to see changes. Like Glasgow is going to see changes. Florence will be okay. Honolulu will see changes. Jacksonville, Las Vegas. Now, of course, a lot of them do have expiring contracts. I'm not going to pretend that all these players are signed. They're not. This is what their projected is. So if they re-signed their entire team right now, this is what their cap would be. Even teams like North Bay, Portland, St. Paul's, these are going to be the teams that's going to come grab those players. What's going to be interesting to see is what players move. So we're going to go look at the Vikings as an example. So we're going to keep in mind that 1680. So already, season 13, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 players are on expiring contracts. And then some of the players that are not on expiring contracts, like Stoneway Rivers, are heavily rumored to be in process of being traded. So I bring attention to that because we're going to definitely for sure see at least one of these players hit the market. It's probably going to be the older players because that's usually how the market goes. But even, not David Revers, but AJ Stryker, I think, is one that's not an owner player. We could see in a different team come the next season, and it's probably going to be those bottom feeder teams. So that's why I want to discuss cap info, because anybody on those bottom feeder teams, I know like Portland's locker room, they're very sick of being on the losing side of games. Your future's strong. And with that new waiver rule, I'm going to use Ivis Maeve as an example because she's my fiance and she won't get mad at me if I talk about this. Um, if come next season, in the off season, I decide I'm going to send her down because I signed a player, yeah, another team might claim her, but that's just an option that teams like Portland, I believe, have, is that waiver in the off season. I'm sure we're going to see some more announcements about how off season waivers will work, just because, as I said, I could send down like Iris Maeve for lower overall, Sidney Crosby, Romeo. Not saying I will, but this is some of those things that we now have to watch out for in the off season, is those changes of, I would say, superpowers, and watching those teams in the bottom scales finally catching up. Maybe seeing some players return to the minors who probably shouldn't have been called up yet. Like Sidney Crosby is one that probably shouldn't have been called up yet, only out of 59 overall. Um, and just to like, prove that point, we'll go look at Atlanta. Atlanta has no 59 overalls on their team other than the goalie. That's how much Sidney Crosby probably shouldn't have been called up. That's the spot that should have went to like the 71 overall here. Or if we go look at, I know Columbus has, or maybe they don't, yeah, right there, an 81 overall and a 78 overall, who are pro-ready players who haven't got their chances yet because of the high cap and because of, there's been a lot of restrictions on trade this season. There hasn't been a lot of trades. There's been a lot of player holding. So I'm very excited to see the waiver wire be able to give these guys their opportunities that they deserve, be able to give those minor teams those opportunities that they deserve. And that cap power I talked about is a huge reason why. Like, I think Columbus actually has the most prospects, so it's a good time. Oh, here's another example. We know he's not going to get a call up because we've already got that confirmation, but these are players that are way above the overall of some of these pro teams, and they're not even in pros yet. So this is why the waiver was exciting. This offseason with the cap changes is going to be exciting. We're going to see so much movement, so much minor guys probably get opportunities. A whole bunch of retirements I think are coming as well, because I think the retirement age is either 34 or 35. I think it's 34, because I think the oldest I've seen is 33s. So Yes, we're going to see that first real shift in hierarchy. I couldn't have said it better. These top teams are historically finally move into that rebuild era. The cap going down instead of up this year is a huge help for that. Yeah, here's another example. We got a 59 and a 62 up on Sydney. So, or even the 73. So there's so many players that haven't got those opportunities that they deserve that are finally going to get those opportunities. Yeah, those teams that have been at the top. And I don't think that, and I know I see a lot of people complaining about that. We're going to see, yeah, the league's aging. But I don't think the teams at the top aren't there because they haven't earned it. Toronto is going to be at the top for a while. I think the league's set up in a way where those really old players are benefited from their ages. And actually, yeah, this is why I said Turk is probably the team that doesn't belong. They have a lot of lower overalls compared to a lot of the Europe teams. Um, Vancouver has a lot of young guns too. But those teams in the top have historically been able to dominate the trade market, keep bringing in young guys, um, keep playing very well. So we're going to see that shift in hierarchy with the cap changes, the waiver wire, the cap going down, which is, of course, cap changes. So I'm excited for this offseason. You should be excited. Um, yeah, but as I said, the league's designed in a way where teams will be on the top for a while when they're on the top. Excuse me. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. That's actually fairly realistic to real life. You look at the NHL, the Maple Leafs, Bruins, Tampa were the only teams from the Atlantic Division making playoffs consistently from like 2018 to 2023. I guess also the Panthers. So usually the teams with that like age group from 27 to 30 do really well in real life too. And then the wild card teams are the ones that keep rotating as they slowly get older and then take those top teams' places. I think we're finally going to see that top team shift. Um, or I'm just hyping up next season for no reason. That's a possibility too. But like even Columbus, they have a 33 overall year old. They have a bunch of expiring contracts, so we're gonna see a massive shift. I don't think Columbus is worried about their expiring contracts, obviously having the most prospects in the league. But you never know. They are pretty well overall. Um, but yeah, that's what I wanted to draw attention to was all those changes. I'm pretty sure there's a sheet that we can see that yeah, pending pro free agents. Here they are. So that's 185 defenders and pros who are pending free agents, and obviously not 185 are going to hit the market. With the way the league's been going, a lot of them won't stay active, but a lot of players hitting free agency. So watch out for this offseason. I think it's going to be a blast, and all the goalies as well. There's a lot of goalies. Um, um, will be retiring. I think James Stone is probably retiring. I think Coco Raccoon and Chris McBride also have to retire. So we're going to see a lot of retirees. Thank you, Beavis. I appreciate the compliment. How is Detroit? Fantastic question. I don't think I covered Detroit. So when we look at Detroit, right now they have 7 expiring contracts, 2 prospects, and a lot of those expiring contracts are those highs overalls. And if we go back to the cap info page, which by the way, everybody has access to this page. Doug pointed it out to me the other day because I forgot it existed. So Detroit's projected cap is 1670, so they have about 10 cap space to play with this offseason. Well, teams like Abiku, Vancouver, they're going to have to figure some stuff out. I have no idea how Vancouver's going to get out of cap hell, other than they're just going to have to let go some of these big names. I think that's all you can do. You have tons of prospects as well, though. Black Magic, Beavis. Yeah, that sounds about right. They're gonna have to bring in either a goaltender, most likely. I'll give them balance. They can have my second player. Greenwood, I would imagine, is staying. They're not even that old, which is the worst part. They're losing so many people. Kovalchuk, I would imagine Kovalchuk you might let walk, just because he's going backwards, going forward, and you have a lot of young guys going up. But I'm not Beavis. Beavis is magical. Rome is magic. Well, Vancouver is magical. They're not Rome anymore. So I'm sure they'll be fine. Um, of course, the red on the rosters, for anybody wondering who haven't been paying attention to the rule changes, those are your ghost tags. So that's all worth mentioning as well. So if you see any red, they are for sure gone next season. They are inactive players. They don't exist. We already got 1, 2. I think we might just... I know Portland has 1. So that would put us at 3. Oh, they need to change some numbers. Come on, Firebirds. Can't have 2 5s. You gotta get on that. Okay, you're doing better than Hartford. So that's, what, 4 now? Yes, so those are the ghost tags. Which it's sad to see so many of them. But any ghost tags are guaranteed pro roster spots open next season. So for those people in the minors, which is wildly entertaining right now, much more trade action in the minors than the majors, do know that there is for sure going to be spots open. So that's worth being excited about. Like Sydney has 1. So I think that's 6 guaranteed spots opening. And I think UConn also has 1. No, the UConn doesn't. Okay. Yeah, UConn's being hit by a young goalie. That's probably not helpful. Okay, we'll go back to my really bad slideshow because I couldn't figure out how to do this on the software. Oh, that's the wrong button. Okay. The final one we're going to talk about today, Portland's future. I talked about this in the podcast last time. I do need special guests if I figured out how to add them. If you do it now, I will go talk about it. Seriously, if you post it right now, I will open my Discord and I will talk about it. It will happen. Um, it also helps with Portland's segment. Okay, so the final segment I was going to talk about is Portland's. Of course, for anyone who doesn't know, Portland is now 10 seasons old. Technically 11. I missed it last year, but we were doing the relocation and I didn't want to celebrate both. So the Lumberjacks, the Norfolk Navigators have come together to play 10 seasons of GOHLS hockey. Yes, I know. I covered that anybody with the projected cap hits is if they resign everybody. Which is why we were talking about all those expired contracts and people who may leave. Because, yes, that's only if they bring back everybody, and that's not going to be possible. We're going to see definitely some 90s hit the market this offseason. And Portland has a lot of room to play with, so I'm excited for that. So talking about Portland's future, we're celebrating our 10th season. We've been wearing that special alt. We won't make playoffs, which is very disappointing because it's been 10 seasons of Portland hockey. There's 2 trades coming when Beavis posts them. They've been approved, so I'm sure I can talk about them. I don't think I'm going to get yelled at if I talk about them because they've been approved. However, I was avoiding it because I don't want the players to find out through this live stream. So, but my players already know. So, Pro Goat will be leaving Portland, not in a trade. He's just going inactive, which hurts. he's hit that mic, so he will be leaving me. Still wish they'd fix my recreate player. Anyone who on the stats sheets, I'm calling you out right now. This is sad. And slash A, and slash A, and slash A. Have no idea what his stats are. It's been hard to guess. Bobby Green has been traded alongside Aaron Martin to Sydney. So both those 2 players are leaving us in a trade that I would say was not a win for Portland. It wasn't meant to be a win for Portland. I was trying to help Sydney out so they could leave their minor players in a little bit longer. I could open up some cap space, get a little younger. St. Paul has 8. That's crazy. I didn't even know St. Paul had so many. What's your target for this season's draft? Well, we can actually look at that. Hold on. I don't know if I'm actually allowed to show that, so I won't show that. I don't think I can show that sheet. Portland has 1 second and 4 third-round picks. So I think with the size of this draft class, my target as of right now would probably be a high second-round pick. I don't know if I have a target. I don't know if we'll get a chance to draft. That's what I'm worried about. No, I knew Pogoat. Me and him been having conversations. I knew Pogoat was probably leaving me. Um, he just hasn't been responding to my DMs for like a week, so I didn't know if it was for sure or not, which is why I didn't tell you yet. You know, I want Rex Jordan just because I love that name. Um, he has no overall, so I'm predicting he's a 95. I do. I gotta load my prospect pool. Um, and I'm hoping in order to load my prospect pool, um, that perfect right into the league. Transactions. You guys get to see my Discord. I hope it's cool. Oh, there was only 2 trades, and both have Portland, but tons of minor league trades. Okay, well we'll start with the pros, and I'll finish talking about. Yeah, I want to load my prospect pool. I don't know if I'll be able to, just because, as I said, I have 4 third-round picks, which I was super excited about having all these picks, but at the rate people are creating, we don't have a third round right now. We probably have 2 rounds at max, maybe a couple picks in the third, and that's provided all these players don't go inactive. I don't think any of them will, except maybe the Zori here. Everyone else has not missed too many progressions, which is good. When the young ones aren't missing progressions, there's also players like I think Aaron Beast is Detroit's recreate. Um, you know, Doug Wooden Jr. I think is Doug's recreate. If I had to guess, so those guys are for sure not on my list, but we'll see what we can do. We'll see what we can do. Let's talk those trades. Okay, so here's that Portland one I was talking about, where it was like, yeah, Portland lost this trade for the immediate. So we bought back our 3rd pick, aka we just removed the condition. So Sydney has no way to get that pick now. We sent over Bobby Green, who's going to immediately be getting his pro spot due to the Eagle Hawks losing both Belmont and Strawn. So that's why I sent these guys over. I was trying to help them out a bit. So from a management perspective, really stupid trade. I moved the 92 overall, I think, for an 85 overall, a 3rd pick for what should have been a 2nd-round prospect. But it wasn't necessarily about building my roster. It was about making sure Sydney could keep competing. Nobody in the minors had to be called up super early and watch the players just get destroyed. So that was more or less what my plan was. Um, and then the 2nd trade was also Portland. So we sent Mato Romeo over to the Vikings and brought in Stoneway Rivers III, who was actually a member of Portland before. So this isn't so much we brought him in as we brought him back. And I'm actually really excited to have him back. He was originally traded because he wanted to go pro and I didn't have a spot. Now I have a spot, so I'm glad he's back. So we're excited to welcome both Max Chapman, Stoneway Rivers III. And then, of course, that 2nd-round pick is juicy, but it's not for this season, it's for next season. So that will all depend on recreates, how the Vikings do in the standings, excuse me, and all of those other chaotic things we have to consider. But I like that 2nd pick. And the other thing is Mato Romeo's on an expiring contract, so there was a small chance he was leaving Portland anyways. He told me he would most likely come back. He said in the offseason, he wanted to try free agency, but wanted to keep Portland as an option. So there's a real chance he'll just be back with Portland. And before I even made the trade, I was discussing with the Vikings, and they're like, yeah, we don't plan to bring him back. So that door's open, which makes me excited, because it could actually be a trade that Portland sees where Mato comes back. And then we actually would not really give up anything and just have gains in Stoneway Rivers and that 2nd-round pick. Now, here's what's going to happen with my luck, though. Mato's probably actually going to sign with some random team, go win the cup next season. That's how it's actually going to go. But the option's there to bring him back, and that's what makes me, as an owner and general manager of Portland, very excited. Oh no, Caillou! Not Caillou! So, for anyone who couldn't figure it out, any of these ghosts mean ghost tags. So that's 1, 2, 3 additional ghost tags. So to say the season has a bit of a crisis going on with losing players is not an understatement. Dump and Chase is gone, and both Thor and Belmont and Bruce Strong are gone. Um, so that's already 1, 2, 3 more pro spots opening for anybody who's excited for any opening pro spots. Quebec and Dump and Chase leaving. Love that name. I'm kind of sad to see him go. I apologize to Quebec too, because that's probably going to be their first of many to come. Um, and by many to come, I think they just have 2. We can go check. This sheet comes in handy. Quebec Bulldogs. This is why I loved the trade earlier, because they were building for the future. Yeah, so Dump and Chase and Pro Goat. That's probably it. But there's 2 big names for this team. Pro Goat was a huge name to lose for us. So, yeah, just him and Pro Goat. That's what I thought too. Now let's look at minor league trades. I've been having fun with these because they're so interesting because there's no trade history yet. I'm glad you liked the trades. They're some of the better trades I think I've done historically in my Places of Sim weeks. Anybody from my VHL days would remember how bad of trades I historically made. So those are some pretty good trades. Um, we're gonna see Jane Doe and Slug Stern in a trade between Halifax and Houston. So we'll start with the Halifax end. I will start with Houston because they came up first. Jane Doe is a 6156. She is a sniper. It's not that surprising. They kind of dominate the league. High speed. Endurance is a bit on the low side. So this is something that I've been vocal to the league about. I hate the endurance stat. I hate that players have to progress the endurance stat. I kind of wish that it was 99 overall by default. But that's just from a team management perspective. That kind of sucks from a player's perspective development is when something has a default to like a 99 overall. It takes the fun out of it. But when I'm planning lines and everything, endurance is like one of the most important things because that is what determines your player's stamina, um, how much how much hitting they take and the ability to get back up. All of that is really determined by endurance. They made it so important in the past couple EA games, way more than they used to be, and we're seeing players get hit hard by that. So that 70 overall endurance isn't bad. It's definitely pro ready, but yeah, it's on the low side. Um, body checking, sniper on the low side, that's fine. With a sniper, you'd want high shooting, so that's a little concerning. I guess it's fine in the minors. Houston already had a player that had a pretty nice shot. Surprised it's at 99 overall when none of his other shooting stats are, but that's okay. But yeah, low shooting, low overall, it makes sense. But yeah, not gonna be super effective yet. They'll get there. That 72 swap shot accuracy and 72 wrist shot accuracy is pretty good though. I do like that. So not bad. We'll go look at Slug Stayins next. They'll be currently on Halifax. There's Halifax. Swagstone. Defender. Okay, so we're seeing a defender for a forward trade. Sources tell me another minor trade is incoming. We need insiders again. I need stuff like that. That's exciting. Swagstone. Two-way defender. Has actually a higher shot than the sniper does. That's going to be interesting. Defenders, I've noticed, score a lot in the crash to net strategy and everything else. Like, they definitely score a lot more than they used to. And I think that's partly because we've broke the league. Like, the sim engine isn't designed for everybody to be 99 overalls across every stat, or even 90 overalls across every stat. Like, go play an NHL franchise mode and tell me how many 90 overalls you find. There's not many, so the league's not actually designed for it. So I think that's why we're seeing defenders score so much. But that high scoring, I think that makes them the best. Yeah, that's their best scoring defender. So that's going to be very important for them. That brings them some scoring depth. That's a good pickup for Houston. Two-way defender. He can hit. Can he hit well? Not really. But again, he has that endurance stat that's really high. Oh wait, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong one. Really low endurance stat That's going to affect them. Oh, Sophie, 33 endurance. You on the ice for like 2 seconds at a time? Wow. Sorry, that was probably mean. Yeah, the endurance stat, I talk about it all the time. It's the most important. Halifax is in another trade. Halifax is wheeling and dealing, and Saskatoon, I think that's their first trade. Omi's moving. That one shocks me. You know, him being a GM and all, they don't usually get moved around a lot. I guess this is the minors, of course, so that's not super surprising. And Chester, so they're coming from Saskatoon. Let's go look at Saskatoon. We'll go give my opinions on them. Omi's a 69.56. And I think the other one was Chester, right? Yes. My memory doesn't deceive me. 62.57, so 260s. Omi's a sniper with a really high shot. So I'm sure he's probably one of the score leaders. That's a really good move. I haven't even looked at the other one, but when you bring in a shot that high, that's already a good move. And then you bring in someone like Chester, who I think is a sniper as well, but he has that really low shot again that we talked about earlier. Low endurance. Not bad endurance, but they're fast. That actually, strength isn't bad. Okay. Not a bad move. Let's go look at the other two. Then I'll pick my winner. Goat Jackson and Alien. That is a. Noah Luda? Noah Uha? I don't know how to say that. I need to get on a commentator mic and say some of these names live. That could be fun. They're coming from Halifax. Halifax just like moved everybody. Halifax said they're just building a new team on top of the old one. Well, not gonna try to say that name again. You can't make me. 61.58. Okay, so 61 and a 62. They're about the same. It's a playmaker. 78 on passing. Puck control of 72. That's pretty good for a playmaker. That low endurance, that's gonna come and bite people in the butt. Once you get the pros, that low endurance isn't helpful. Good strapper. Good strength. Acceleration's on the low side. His face-off is kind of high for somebody that just plays winger. Not bad. I guess it's probably the... No, I don't think it's the default. Maybe it's the default for the playmaker. I can't remember. 75's not bad. Okay, Deke. Aggression's pretty good. Offensive awareness is going to help. That's a pretty good offensive awareness for a minor player. I think that's a really good pickup. And the other one was... Goat Jackson. Is he the GOAT? So forward for forward. Okay. Sniper for sniper. That's a much different on the shot. Much lower overall. I think Omi has the better build from what I'm looking at here. Yeah, I think Saskatoon won this one. I think that Omi bring in is huge. I could be biased. Oh no, sorry, Halifax. Halifax bought an Omi, didn't they? Yeah, so I think Halifax won that trade. I don't think it's close. We talk about future. These are all players that probably aren't getting called up next year. And when you keep that in mind, I think it's easy to say Halifax won that trade. Omi is going to write it up. And then the only other transaction, Rex Jordan. It's a new guy, I think. I think he's a fresh create. Let's go look at his creation. Where is he? Yeah, there he is. Yeah, there he is. Jordan, he's a center. He's going to be a power forward. So we talked about this earlier. In the minors right now, because not everybody's 99 overall, you see how important those roles are a lot more. So power forwards are going to be helpful in the minors. Stubble beard. Okay. Disboard. Love that. Okay, sorry. I can't judge people for spelling. I'm very dyslexic. I'm sure you've all seen it, even on my little slideshow I have going. I'm sure you've seen it. So I don't judge out of a hideaway, but disboard is something I would say, and I love that. Okay. So that's all I have to cover. So we're probably gonna end it here. I enjoyed chatting with all of you guys. Thank you for coming and chatting and enjoying. So talking about what this stream's gonna be like, what the future of it's gonna be. I think the Vive format did pretty well. You guys all seem to enjoy it. So with that in mind, I think I might keep the Vive format around when I can. Avoid the avoid the podcast format. All of my streams I will post on YouTube as well as Twitch, so you have that access to go review them whenever you want, see the changes over time. I'm going to keep working on format. It's mainly going to be covering transactions, league rule changes, my opinion on things. That's what I'm going to stick to. So I think Rinkside, when and when it comes back, it's coming back. There's no way it's not. I love it too much. But if it comes back, I think they're gonna stick to more of the like actual gameplay coverage, while I stick more to that transaction side. I know they talk about both. The next episode will probably be after the trade deadline, if not right before playoffs. I will do a playoff prediction. I will also discuss definitely. I want to do a logo ranking because I want to get my opinion out there, and I think that would be a fun thing to do. But other than that, I'm gonna end it here. Thank you all for watching. I had a blast. I hope you enjoyed it, and we will be back in a couple weeks. Thank you. And